Thank you, everyone. Welcome to another Expats Portugal video, where it's our mission to help you successfully find all the information you need about moving to or settling in Portugal. Tonight, we'll be discussing the non-habitual residency and tax obligations in Portugal with our very special guest, Ricardo Chaves from All Finance Matters. AFM areas of expertise are tax and accountancy, and they really understand the need of an international community in getting to grips with the Portuguese tax system. If you're watching us for the first time, please ensure you are subscribed to our channel and hit that bell so that you can be alerted every time we put up something new. Also, feel free to comment in the comment section and we'll endeavour to get back to you if you have any questions. If you would like to be part of our live audience and have your questions answered, please go www.expatsportugal.com and sign up as a club or premium club member, and you can be a part of our live audience. Now, I'm happy to introduce you to our host of the show. Over to you, Carl.
Thanks, Astrid. Good evening, everybody. Look, Lincolnshire. Would that be UK or Illinois? Lisboa, Fuzeta, Cascais tonight. Hello from Lisbon, Utrecht as well. So people from all over the world tuning in. Do, as Astrid said, get your questions into the chat and be here and ask the questions you need to understand for getting your tax obligations in Portugal absolutely spot on. And no better person to speak to about that than Ricardo, the legend in our community, Ricardo Chaves from AFM, All Finance Matters. Good evening to you, Ricardo.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Great to meet you.
So should I share my presentation then with everyone?
Sure, you have got a presentation for us. I wouldn't mind just getting to know you a little bit better
Okay.
first, if that's all right. Tell us, if you will, about yourself and AFM. Where are you in the country? And is that where you come from, the Portuguese man?
No, I'm from Lydia,
okay.
The center of the Algarve, the center of Portugal. I moved to the Algarve because my father in '89 came to work here. And at that time, there was no family. We just moved, the four of us, to the Algarve, and we just stayed. Now I have 4 children. They're all from the Algarve. I live in Tavira since 2020, which is one of the best places in the world to be. Perfect. Don't tell anyone. And basically that's it. I'm a chartered accountant. I'm a certified accountant since 25 years ago. And I set up this company 10 years ago, All Finance Matters. At the time, it was just me behind the desk. Most of our clients were always expats or international clients. And then the business grew, and now we have a team of 35 people, several accountants and tax advisors. And we serve different types of clients, from individuals to companies, from many different nationalities.
Superb. Well, congratulations on good work there. 4 kids
Yep.
in the new generation in the Algarve. And it looks to me like, I mean, the Algarve life is treating you well. Did you start in accountancy when you were 10 years of age, given that it was 25 years ago?
No, I'm 46, so I was 21.
Oh. Okay, wow. Well, congratulations. Fantastic. Great to have you here. By all means, there's a question already about the NHL. You're going to take in so many of the themes and questions that will be asked in the chat in your presentation. And then after the presentation, we'll get to anything you didn't touch upon whilst you were talking. So yeah, take it away.
Okay. So I'll share.
I'll just say a few more hellos while you're finding that. Marian, who will be in Cascais in March. Congratulations from Austin, Texas. Arizona, Monica's in Arizona tonight. Good evening, says Howard. Hope you're all well. Happy belated New Year to you all. Thank you for that. So you're one and over into February there. Kathy's here. Hello to everyone from Arganil in Portugal. First time to attend. This is a very important and attractive subject, and presumably that's why you're here tonight. So thanks for being here. And hello from Porto. I'm curious to know whether home improvements, for example, remodeling are tax deductible. We'll get to all of these. Thank you so much for your questions. How are you doing there, Ricardo?
I think I'm already sharing, right? Can you see
You're on
my
the screen right there? Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. So this is the presentation we prepared about non-habitual residency, and also for you to understand what are the tax obligations in Portugal. So this presentation, I suppose that Astrid will then be able to share with anyone that requests it. That's what we did last time. So in terms of the the services we provide, I mean, like I already said, we offer international tax advice, fiscal representation, all sorts of tax services in Portugal for individuals and companies. We just make sure that you are fully compliant and understand the Portuguese tax system. One of the things that everybody asks is the non-habitual residency. It's a very attractive tax scheme if you are moving to Portugal, because it gives you several tax exemptions and tax breaks over a period of 10 years. We've done a little roadmap here to explain. So the first thing that you need to do if you decide to move to Portugal is you need to get your fiscal number. I suppose that there are, we can organize this, but I suppose there are also other companies that partner with expats that can do it. And there are immigration lawyers that can assist you with that as well. The first step is to get the fiscal number. Normally, if you are a non-EU citizen, you need to appoint a fiscal representative. To get the fiscal number, which you can do with a partner or do it online, you will need normally a copy of the passport and utility bill or driving license from your current address. So if you are in the States or in Canada, that's what you need to give: a utility bill from that country or the driving license and a copy of the passport. Once you have the fiscal number and you start your visa process or your residency process, which is easier if you are a EU citizen, you then apply for residency at the local council. So if you are a EU citizen, you just need to have an address, either through a rental contract, through a property that you purchase, or if you are living with another person that is a relative or not, you just need to have an attestation from the local parish to say that that's where you are living. It's a simple process, and normally you get the EU residence certificate within a matter of days. If it's a visa, which for most of you, that's the case, you need to start the process from your home country, and then wait until you are allowed to come to Portugal, and then from Portugal wait for the appointment with the CEF, which is the immigration office. Normally, this is something that you can do on your own, but normally we always advise for you to seek advice from an immigration lawyer or someone that can help you through the process. Once you have the appointment with CEF, which is the immigration office, normally you are approved, you are a resident of Portugal, you will be waiting for your residency card in the post. And after a few weeks, once you receive it, you then have 60 days to change your address on your fiscal number. So the fiscal number that you initially got was with the address from your home country. Now you are now resident of Portugal. You have 60 days to change your the address on that tax number. And by changing that address, it means that you become tax resident in Portugal. And from that moment, you have the obligation of submitting a tax return each year with your worldwide income. After you have the address corrected on the fiscal number, you can then apply for the NHR, the non-habitual residency status. It's important that you realize that the NHR, you can only apply if you haven't been tax resident in the previous 5 years. So you need to apply on the first year that you come here. If you miss the deadline, it means that you will never be able to get the NHR again unless you are 5 years out of the country and then return. After you get the NHR sorted, the next step is to get tax residence certificates in case you require this to stop being taxed in the country of state. This not always happens because it depends on the country. If you're American, the bad news is that because you are American, you continue paying tax in the US in most circumstances, irrespective of the fact that you are tax resident in Portugal. So the tax residence certificates might not be so important in your case, but they are for many other nationalities, such as the UK and other European countries, because it will mean that you will stop paying the taxes in that country. And they would only do it if they have a tax resident certificate issued by the Portuguese tax authorities. So next, in terms of the Portugal NHR tax regime, it's a regime that it's in place since 2009. I'll do the first applications we've done were a bit later in 2013. It has attracted a lot of people to retire in Portugal, but also high-skilled individuals to work. Recently, especially since COVID, people realize that they can work remotely from anywhere. They don't need to be in the cold in Canada. They could be in the sun in Portugal. So why not? There's a lot of people that decided to move and work from a better place. That's one of the reasons why Portugal is being so popular. And obviously the NHR has a role on that, because it has the fact that there are low tax rates for a period of 10 years and several tax exemptions allows a lot of people. It's another incentive to tell people to come. In terms, like I said, the people that can apply for the NHR are anyone that came to Portugal and has not been tax resident in Portugal in the previous 5 years. Sometimes people ask me about the golden visa. They ask me about if their occupation is eligible for the NHR. We must say that the non-habitual residency status is not linked with the investment you make, is not linked with the golden visa, is not linked. It's a special tax status. If you are a resident in Portugal and you haven't been tax resident before in the previous 5 tax years, you are eligible for the NHR, period. That's it. It's as simple as it is. Then if your income qualifies for the tax breaks of the NHR, that's another matter. It depends what are your earnings, if you are retired, if you are working, but that's something else. The NHR status is available as long as you haven't been tax resident in the previous 5 tax years. In terms of, so there's no property investment required. You could just rent. You don't need to rent for 1 year. You could just rent for months, as long as you have a properly registered rental contract. Or, like I said, you could be living with a friend. And as long as you have an attestation from the local parish saying that you live with that friend, and as long as the immigration office is happy with that, you are fine. Another question that people ask is about the minimum time you are required to be in Portugal to become an NHR. I mean, that's related with the residency rules. If you apply for a residency permit in Portugal, you are supposed to spend in Portugal 8 months of each 12. And you are not supposed to be out of the country for more than 6 consecutive months. If you are, you can always have a justification, either for medical reasons, work, etc. But that's the residency process. In terms of tax, once you tell the tax authorities that you are resident in Portugal, you are just saying that you want to fulfill your tax obligations here. So they will accept that you are a resident until you tell them that you're not. So until you tell them, I'm no longer resident in Portugal, I now live in another country, and until you prove that, they will always consider that you are tax resident in Portugal. What you need to make sure is that the fact that you are away from Portugal, depending on your lifestyle, for instance, if you are spending a lot of time in the UK, for instance, that could trigger residency in the UK, so, or in another country where you are spending the time. So you just need to be careful. It's not Portugal that will oblige you to spend, it's not the Portuguese tax authorities that will oblige you to spend a minimum time in Portugal. It could be the other country where you are spending more than 6 months, for instance, or even less, that could say, oh, because of that, you are now a resident of this state. We all know that the tax authorities in different countries, sometimes they do not control these, but you should be aware that they have access to the information, and if they want, that could be a problem. So in terms of the application for the NHR, like I said, once the first step is to get the NIF. Only after you get the residency permit is possible to apply for your Portuguese tax residency and apply for the NHR. We sometimes have clients that say, but I've been living in Portugal since March 2022. I've been waiting for my CEF appointment. I've been more than 6 months of the year in Portugal. So I suppose I'm a tax resident of Portugal by the law. By the eyes of the law, I'm a tax resident of Portugal. And I say, well, you're correct, but you're not at the same time, because I cannot go to the tax authorities and change your NIF, your register, because they will ask me for a residency permit, and you don't have the residency permit because you are still waiting for the immigration office. So there's nothing to worry there. If I would go and submit a tax return on your behalf saying that you were tax resident in 2022 because you've been here since March, I will then be creating you a problem, because when I go to apply in 2023 for your tax, for your NHR status, it would be denied because they would say, well, he's been tax resident in 2022. And you weren't. You were living here, but you were still waiting for the immigration papers, for the immigration documents. So you were not technically a resident of Portugal. It's true that you've spent more than 6 months, but in practical terms, I cannot make you a tax resident because you don't have yet the residency permit. In terms of the time frames for you to become an NHR once you come to Portugal, I mean, it's a process that is fairly quickly. It's done online. At the moment, the tax offices in Portugal, since COVID, in most towns, they don't allow people to just come in and change their address. We need to book for an appointment to change the address of the NIF. So in view of that, sometimes it might take a few weeks, but it's still a quick process. It's longer when we are waiting for CEF, because at the moment, from what I understand, CEF has a huge backlog. CEF is the immigration office, by the way, for those that don't know. And there are people waiting a few months, sometimes 6 months for an appointment. In terms of the important deadlines to submit the NHR application. So anyone that became tax resident in 2022, which means anyone that changed the address on their fiscal number in 2022, they need to apply for the NHR before 31st of March 2023. So it's just around the corner. It's just another 1.5 months. So if you became a resident, a tax resident in Portugal, so it means that if you change the address on the NIF last year in 2022, before 31st December, you need to apply for the NHR before 31st of March this year. There could be the situation where you missed the deadline. I've seen clients that came here, they were not aware of the non-habitual residency, or they thought that they didn't qualify, or it was not meeting their was not what they wouldn't give any advantage for them, they would thought, so they didn't apply. And in fact, they missed the deadline. But sometimes it's possible to still correct that situation if we are able to prove that in that year that you were supposed to register in Portugal, if you were still tax resident in the previous country, we can find a way of changing your address retrospectively, so that you just implying that you just officially became a tax resident in 2022. It's not an easy process. Sometimes takes nearly 1 year, but it's possible. But to avoid all that, it's always better that you meet the deadline. So if you became tax resident last year, you apply as soon as possible before the 31st of March. If you became tax resident this year, you have till the end of March next year. But I always say just apply now, because the sooner, the better. People ask if the fact that you are NHR exonerates you from tax from all your foreign source income. It's not correct. There's a lot of foreign source income that is exempt under the NHR, but there are sources of income that are taxed. Private pensions are taxed at 10%. If you work even from foreign source and you don't pay tax in the country of source, you would pay tax in Portugal at 20%. If you have capital income, most of capital income, depending on the double tax agreement, are exempt under the NHR. But if you have capital gains from securities or shares in Portugal and outside Portugal, you will be taxed at 28%, even with the NHR. Okay. Main advantages of the NHR tax scheme in Portugal: you have this special tax treatment for 10 years. After 10 years, you will be taxed as any other resident. So this is non-renewable, and you will be taxed mostly at the progressive tax rates. In Portugal, there's no wealth tax. There's no gift tax for family members. There's no inheritance tax. Like I said, there's no minimum stay requirement, but you need to make sure that in other countries, you don't trigger the residency tests there. You become a tax resident in a while listed within the EU. There's free remittance of funds to and from Portugal. So when clients say, oh, I just sold something in Canada, I sold my property, I'm going to transfer a few €100,000 to Portugal, what tax do I pay? You don't pay tax just because you are transferring money. You just need to declare your worldwide income in Portugal from the moment that you are tax resident, but that doesn't mean that you're going to pay tax. And the fact that you are transferring money in or out of Portugal, there's no tax on those transfers. You just need to make sure that when you speak with your bank, that you can justify the origin of the funds. And that's just for money laundering purposes. And in most cases, it's never an issue unless you are bringing money from a dodgy country or where you cannot justify why you are bringing that money to your bank account. Another advantage of the NHR, it's 20% flat tax for digital nomads and other high-skilled individuals. There's a lot of people that are coming to Portugal to work, not only to retire. And the tax system is very, very attractive. And you also have, on top of the low rates, you can have tax discounts on the first 2 years, which I'll go through on the next slides. In terms of tax obligations in Portugal, if you became tax resident last year, like I said, you need to apply for the NHR if you haven't yet, and you need to submit your tax return in Portugal from the 1st of April till the end of June. Even if you had no income in whatever last year, you still need to report at least your foreign bank accounts. It's mandatory to report any bank accounts you have outside Portugal. And if you didn't have any income, you will just report foreign bank accounts. The tax year is January 1st to December 31st. If you came to Portugal in June 2022, for instance, this year, when you submit the tax return, the period, it will be from June till the end of the year. Okay, so on the year that you arrive in Portugal, you are only tax, there's a split year treatment, and you are only tax resident from that day that you arrive until the end of the year. The same way when you leave, you normally have a split year treatment where you just, the tax year is just the 1st of January till the moment that you stop being tax resident. A lot of people ask me about Social Security payments because they concern that they need to pay Social Security in Portugal, especially if this is a requirement to access the national health system. It's not required to make any Social Security payments. You have access to the national health system just because you are a resident. So if you are a EU citizen and you got the EU resident certificate, you just need to go to the health center of your area with that document and the fiscal number and passport and register. They will give you what they call a U10 number, which is a user number, let's say, and you have free access to the healthcare in Portugal. The same way, if you are applying for a D7 or any other type of visa, instead of showing the EU residency card, you just show your residency card, and you will get the free access to health in Portugal. You will pay slightly more than a normal resident. I don't know exactly what's the difference, but it's tiny, because the most of the practices on the national health system are almost for free. But if you are not making Social Security contributions, you pay slightly more. But the thing is that you cannot make Social Security payments unless you have an activity or an employment in Portugal. So you cannot just deliberately go and make contributions. You need to be registered as a sole proprietor or have a job in Portugal in order to make Social Security payments. So for those that are coming to Portugal to do business, most of the cases, the clients start as self-employed, like we call a sole proprietor, which is what you can see on the left. It's an easy register. We just need to have normally to know what are the activities of the person, what services they're going to provide, what's going to be the professions, especially to see if these professions are eligible under the NHR, because the NHR, these special rates are for those activities which they called high-skilled individuals. And only those will have these tax rates. All the others will have the progressive tax rates. And if you have one of those eligible occupations, I mean, all the IT, all the directors, there's a huge list. It's 5 or 6 pages of professions that are available under the non-habitual residency status. The way it works, we will register your activity at the tax office. From that moment, you will be on the tax system as a sole proprietor. You and the business are the same entity. That's the main distinction if you have a company. But you could trade as something else. So all your invoices will have your name, John Smith, but it could be in small letters. And you can have a logo, and you could trade as a trademark or something else if you want, if you don't want to trade under your personal name. The way the taxation normally works, if you are, we call it the simplified regime. So you are assessed on a percentage of the gross income. That percentage in most cases is 75%. So if you are earning 10,000 euros, you will be taxed on 7,500. And because the tax rate is 20% flat, 20% of 7.5, it's 20% of 75, it's 15%. So 20% of 7,500 euros, it will be 1,500 euros for an income of 10,000. There's no Social Security payments on the first year, but there will be Social Security payments after 12 months. So this is something that we always consider, because it could be that after 12 months, if your income is high, we might decide to incorporate a company to avoid those high Social Security payments. On top of the flat rate of 20%, if your income is just from this activity, I mean, there's no salary or pension. If you don't have salary and pension, and your only active income is your self-employment, then you have a 50% discount on year 1. So you just move to Portugal, you open your activity, and basically you're going to pay 7.5% this year on your income. It's very, very low, and no Social Security contributions for 1 year. After 1 year, you no longer have the 50% discount. On year 2, the discount is only 25%, but it's still very attractive, because instead of paying 15%, you're paying, I think, something like 11.25%. But you're going to start paying Social Security. And the Social Security roughly is about 15% of your gross income, with a cap of something like 1,200 a month. If you have a high level of income, normally at this stage, we suggest to incorporate a company. The reason being that if you have an eligible occupation, you are still taxed at 20%. We set up the company under fiscal transparency, which means that the company doesn't pay corporation tax over the profits. You pay the personal income tax at 20% on the distributions from the company. So basically, all the profits that the company makes is taxed on your personal income tax. And irrespective if you take it out of the company or not, it's already taxed, it's already yours. So there's no dividends, there's no further tax. It's no longer the simplified regime. In this case, you do have a P&L and you pay the tax on the profits, but you have the advantage that you can set up a small salary. You still pay Social Security, but instead of paying the full 1,200 a month, you'll be paying something like 300 or 350 euros a month. And your salary and that Social Security is also a cost to the business. Obviously, the company will have higher setup costs than, because you'll need to incorporate a company, register, etc., notary fees. Whether the self-employment, it's much simpler both ways, to start and to stop. The company, you pay to register and incorporate the company, and you also pay if you want to liquidate it. But tax-wise, depending on your level of income, it could be very advantageous. Most of our clients that are coming to Portugal recently, they start as self-employed, and then they move to the company after 12 or 18 months. It's important to understand that in Portugal, Portugal is a bit bureaucratic. It's one of the best places in the world to be, and you will love the lifestyle. You know, people are very quiet, very calm. Is always, everything is fine as always. But when it comes to business, that thing about being fine and slow, it might get on your nerves, especially if you are on a hurry to do something, you want to do business, or if you want to get your things sorted. Things sometimes are a bit bureaucratic. Just to give you
Ricardo, could I just ask a question there? Are the tax office also calm and slow?
No.
No, I thought so. I've heard this.
I can't get into the tax office. If I go there, they will tell me you need to book an appointment.
Yes. So
and
not,
I say,
not
well, but
quite
I just come to do this. I'm an accountant. My client needs this activity registered.
Yeah.
And they will tell me, no, the person that can accept that will only come on Friday. And I say, it can't be right.
Yes.
I need to wait for Friday because the person wants to start the business now.
Yes.
And that's it. If you are a resident, so if the client is already a resident, things are a bit better because I can do everything online, or most of the things I can do through the tax portal. If you are non-resident, I need to go through the tax office, show all the sorts of papers and power of attorneys, and it gets complicated.
Right.
But
Sorry
that's
to
why
interrupt there. I was just checking on how we need to adjust our expectations.
I mean, it's good because then you need an accountant to sort your things. So
good for you.
That's why I have a job.
Yes, perfect. Well done.
Okay, so one of what I was trying to get to, I think this is one of the last slides. So it's don't worry, I'm just finishing. What I was trying to explain is sometimes the client comes to our office, typically this time of the year, and they say, "Oh, I have a business, I do coaching or consultancy, and I charge my clients this. Can you please do my tax return?" And we're going to check, and we say, "You never register your activity at the tax office. You never sent invoices through a certified software or through the tax portal." So there's a lot of people think, "Oh, but I just want to pay the tax. I just want to declare that on my tax return now. We're doing the tax return for 2022. So can I not just do it now?" And we say, well, you can, but on this slide, you could see all the tax obligations that entail the fact that you have a business, that you are doing business in Portugal. So if you are a sole proprietor, you cannot do anything before you register your activity at the tax office. then all the invoices that you send to your clients need to be done through the tax portal or a certified software. So those, that poor guy that 70 years old, he has some bees, and sometimes he just wants to sell his honey, and he used to do some handwriting invoices. He can no longer do that. Everything needs to have a system. So that's why sometimes it's very efficient. Sometimes it just complicates things. But again, that's why you have accountants to do the work. Then you need to communicate all your invoice to the tax authorities by the 5th of the following month. Funny enough, if you haven't done any invoice, you still have to go there to the tax portal before the 5th and say, I haven't invoiced last month. So it's a bit stupid, but that's the law. If you are submitting invoices to a foreign company, normally business to business, you don't charge VAT, but you are still VAT registered. So you need to submit quarterly VAT returns, pay VAT quarterly if it's applicable, submit the monthly tax and social security return, especially if you have employees. Submit the Model 30 in case you are making payments to non-resident services, like if you have a rental property and you are advertising with Airbnb, you need to pay the VAT for that invoice in Portugal, and you submit the Model 30. And then you need to submit the yearly tax return and pay the social security each month. The social security, if you are a sole trader, a sole proprietor, it will be assessed every quarter. So they will see how much you have built in January, February, March, and they will say, okay, you're going to pay X amount for the next 3 months. And then if the next 3 months you haven't invoiced anything, they will say, okay, for the following 3 months, then you just pay the 20 euros, which is the minimum. So it's assessed every quarter, but it means that you need to submit social security returns every 3 months. Basically, these are the main things that I brought to you tonight. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm open for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ricardo. There you go, folks. It's as easy as that. It's all very straightforward, isn't it? So let's take a little bit of a breath here, shall we? Ground and calm, and we will come to you with plenty of questions this evening, Ricardo, I'm sure. And as you might have guessed, a lot of focus on the NHR and on people's pensions, understandably. We've got a lovely, basically a testimonial from Trevor and Shannon, who I think would like to add a few things and ask a few things of you. Current customers, and I've had the pleasure of dealing with AFM, your company, for almost a year. Couple of follow-up questions on our 2022 return. So go ahead, Trevor and Shannon. Good evening to you in Lisbon.
Good evening, Ricardo. Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Ricardo, yes, it's been a lot. It's almost been a year. My gosh, I can't believe the time has flown. But we have followed your advice. We became residents at the end of August, and we updated our NIF within 60 days, removed our fiscal rep, updated our address, and in January we applied for an NHR and were granted. We've employed AFM for our 2022 tax return, so we've got all of the documentation from you. So basically, I assume we're going to send in our NIF and NHR, and you'll make sure we didn't mess them up.
Well done. Thank you very much.
Okay, was that actually a question there, Trevor?
Yeah, it was actually a question. Right. That was the biggest thing. I'm like, I know we did it. Everything Ricardo has said, I followed to the T.
Yes.
And we had these pieces of paper from Finance Portal, and actually they mailed us our NIF updated with the stamp, and the NHR we downloaded once it was approved. Whether or not that's legit, I'm not the the appropriate person to review those.
Only what you'd like Ricardo to set his eyes on those.
So we send those in when we send in our other documentation for you to do our tax return. Correct, Ricardo?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll have a look.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yes. Because that's definitely a thing, isn't it, Trevor? You follow the instructions and you do what you think you're meant to be doing. And then there's still that little bit of doubt, isn't there? Has this worked? Is there going to be a fine? Is there going to be a fine with interest some way down the line? And there's always that little bit of doubt. So, Ricardo, can you put our mind at rest on that? Have you got oversight when you're working with the clients each step of the way on this?
Yes, we go each way of the process with the clients. Many times we take over and we do all the process on their behalf, apart from the meeting with SEF, of course, because they have to be present. But apart from that, we do most of the process. For many clients, we do everything, all parts of the process. We just make sure that you are fully compliant. So you just relax and enjoy Portugal.
There you go.
That was our goal, was to enjoy Portugal. But when you get the documents back, and sometimes you think, well, this is great, they returned it. What does this mean again? You just get different interpretations of some words in the documents. And
it's all in Portuguese. That's a problem. The Portuguese tax portal, it's all in Portuguese. So it's different. It's difficult to understand if you don't speak the language. And then secondly, when you submit a tax return, when your income is from Portuguese source, you make all sorts of simulations. So you could see when you tick one box or the other, if that's going to be a tax refund or a tax payment, and you could choose the option. You can, even if you don't know the system, you could just by attempt before submitting, you can simulate. When it comes to the foreign source income, the tax portal doesn't make any simulation. So if you don't know what you're doing, it could mean a problem, and you could be submitting a tax return thinking, oh, I'm a manager, I'm not paying any tax. And then you come to my office a few months later and say, oh, I have 10,000 euros of tax to pay. How is this possible? Oh, because you tick the wrong boxes. And that's common because people don't understand how the system works. Okay.
So
that's why we're letting you click the boxes and we're not clicking any boxes.
It's better that you let someone else that knows where to click. Okay.
So asking that question again, then that's what you will do for the clients.
Yeah,
right?
That's what we will do for the clients. Yeah.
Trevor.
So we were really impressed with when we got all the information with AFM for starting the 2022 was all the work that you guys actually do for us in getting the 2022 return done. In the United States, when you pay somebody to do your tax return, it's basically you do a bunch of work and send them documents. You actually do a lot of work and make sure we don't mess up.
Thank you.
Which we were very impressed with.
Do you know why? Because if something messes up during this process, it will be us that you will phone to try and sort it out. So we try to avoid that there is problems to sort out. That's why we guide through all steps of the process to make sure that everything is correct. At least that's what we try to do with all the clients.
Brilliant.
We're thoroughly impressed, and with all the information we've gotten from you that we need to send back as we're waiting our U.S. Final statements. Some of the stuff was the bank accounts, and you said so all U.S. bank accounts are ABAs and not IBANs. So we just list the ABA routing and the full account numbers for those. But that would be for all bank accounts, but not for our investment accounts, which aren't really banking accounts. Okay.
One of the questions now that Trevor is talking about this, a lot of the Americans ask is about the timing to file, because normally in the US you file up to the 15th. I think this year is 16 or 18 of April. And in Portugal you file from the 1st of April till the end of June. Normally, we liaise with the clients or with the client CPA in the US, and we don't have yet the tax bill from Portugal. We say that in our estimate, you're gonna have this tax to pay in Portugal, and that's included on the US tax return. So in case there is any tax credit, so that's included on their tax return in the US, which is submitted around the 15th of April. That's where normally it's the deadline. You can file for an extension. We don't deal with the US taxes, by the way. There is a company which is also part of Expats Portugal that you can find on the site that deals with the US taxes.
Absolutely. Yep. In the business directory.
Yeah, that was an interesting question because that was my next question is because Shannon and I are tax accountants for the US side of stuff. And we're like, yeah, we always file as soon as we get up all of our US tax documents, and it's, slam dunk, to do whatever we need to deal with. And so it is basically, we need to figure out whether or not we have a Portugal tax liability before we apply. But as expats, we actually get an extension until June.
Normally, yeah.
Yeah, to file our tax returns without a penalty versus April 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, like it's going to be this year.
Well, that'll come as a relief to some people, I suspect.
Yeah,
I think that only works. Sorry, Trevor. I think that only works if you have no tax to pay in the US, right? Even if you are an expat.
No, I think as an expat, you actually get an automatic extension.
Okay.
I haven't quite figured out exactly what the process is to accomplish that, because I don't really want to tell them I'm an expat yet. So I haven't gotten to that step because they allowed me to put my Portuguese address on my tax return, but I'm kind of hesitant.
Just a reminder, Trevor, we're still recording.
Yeah.
Was that everything from you, Trevor, for Ricardo there?
It was so basically for our returns for Portugal, in the US we get 1099s, W-2s, and then when we file electronically online, we manually input all the data that came from the reporting agencies for our income. How does that process work for our Portugal tax return?
In Portugal, it's called the Model 3. It's called IRS, similar to the US, IRS Model 3. And you then have the attachments depending on the types of income. So you need to have the attachments for the foreign source income and for the non-habitual residency. And because it's not Portuguese source income, nothing is communicated. So you need to insert manually all the information. It's all done electronically. You cannot submit on paper anymore. It needs to be only online. That's why we use your tax password to access the tax portal on your behalf. And that's why you signed the service level agreement to allow us to do that on your behalf. And basically that's it. We will use the exchange rate of Bank of Portugal on the last day of the year, which is what the law says. Oh. So basically, normally the clients give us all their information with the currency that they earn the money on, and we just do the calculations and we submit it. We fill everything in euros in the Portuguese tax site.
Great. Trevor, I'm going to come back to you on some of the more personal issues, because we'd like to keep the recording to about 3/4 of an hour, 50 minutes or so. And obviously, there's a lot of complex information here that you've covered brilliantly, Ricardo. And we'll definitely come back to you, Trevor. Thank you for that input so far, which I think will be very useful for other Americans watching as well. So just a few other generalizations. 3 things I wanted to ask you. A couple of things on vocabulary. For the expats, for the foreigners, contabilidade and fiscalidade. Does that mean accountant and tax expert in Portuguese?
Fiscal, it's tax matters. Contabilidade is accountant.
Okay, so for people, it's just the basics.
Contabilidade is accountancy.
Yep.
That's contabilidade. And fiscalidade is like tax matters.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. And Model 30, I didn't ask you what that was that came up.
Model 3. Model 30, sorry. Yes. Model 30, it's to do when you buy, if you have a business, it's only applicable if you have a business. Okay. And if you are buying goods from suppliers in other countries, okay? Like if you have a local lodging and if you have invoices from Airbnb, or if you have a business and you have invoices from Google or Facebook or others which are in different countries, yes. You are supposed to submit those model and pay the VAT if it's applicable in Portugal.
Very interesting. I think that will prompt some calls to you, Ricardo, on that. So let's take some of these NHR inspired questions, as well as some of the others that have come up here in the chat. Barak, thank you so much for your question. Looking at purchasing a property in September in Coimbra province, still living in the US, what are the tax ramifications? we plan to try and find a management company and lease rent the property until we move. How might that affect taxes? Are we paying US and Portugal taxes if Barak has a plan of that kind?
Okay, so if you rent a property in Portugal, irrespective if it's a long-term let or if it's letting to tourists, you always pay the tax in Portugal, okay, irrespective of your tax residency. That's on all double tax agreements. When there is a fixed base, a fixed establishment, which is the case, you pay the tax in that country. What you will then do is, because you are still living in the US, you will have to tell the US how much was your income in Portugal and how much was the tax that you've paid in Portugal, so that that's deducted against the tax that would be liable in the US. If the tax in the US is higher than what you've paid in Portugal, you would pay the difference. If it's lower, then you just don't pay anything. That's normally how it works.
So
The fact that
both sides.
Yeah, the fact that they are moving to Coimbra doesn't have any implications. So if they can buy and rent, and then in the future, obviously this doesn't have any implications on their NHR, etc., because when they are buying, they are a non-resident.
Yeah, that was the other part of the question, and an important part of that question. So thanks, Ricardo, for anticipating that. Antonio, the withdrawal of the 401k in the US is considered taxable income for the USA IRS. How does the NHR regime treat such withdrawals?
The withdrawals, the distributions that you have from your Roths, IRAs, etc., are normally declared as the same type in Portugal, and under the NHR they are exempt. And this is one of the main advantages of the NHR, because if you were a normal resident, you would be taxed in this type of income. Okay.
Fantastic questions, granular level questions from the folks tonight here. Howard's asking, is there a wills and estate tax in Portugal for residents or an equivalent?
Estate tax. No, there's no inheritance tax. What happens is, if you have a property, your inheritors will pay stamp duty at 0.8% to register in their name. So the state doesn't pay any tax, and the inheritor doesn't pay any tax either. It's just a stamp duty to register the property in their names. Okay. And the 0.8% is based on the tax value of the property, which is normally a lot less than the commercial value.
Ah, good. Okay, that's good to know, Ricardo. Thank you. Nimrod, thank you for your question. The NHR helps with income tax, but not with social security tax, which can be above 20% after 2 years. Are there any exemptions or ways to make the social security tax lower for an organized, independent, or on a living trust will? That's quite specific, isn't it? We might have to return to that afterwards.
For an organized independent,
A living trust will. Howard, let's hold that, and we'll talk to you directly after we've ended the recording, okay?
Because I can only see for an organized independent. That's where the question ends. So
there's another part to that. We'll return to you, Howard, after we've started recording.
Okay.
Please, could I ask if capital gains tax, asks Lynette, will need to be paid in Portugal on the sale of a UK property sold after becoming a Portugal resident, or is this exempt by NHR? Thank you. That's Lynette.
It's exempt. So. Great advantage of the NHR against the normal residency is the sale of a property abroad. It's already taxed in the country of source. Even if it's not in the NHR, it would be exempt. If you were a normal resident, it would not be exempt, and you would pay in Portugal the tax under the progressive tax rates, and you would credit the tax that was paid in the UK. But under the NHR, nothing to worry. You declare, but you don't pay.
Okay, a couple more. This is from Simran. That was for you, Lynette. I hope that's, well, you can clarify that a bit later on if you need to know any more. But for Simran, hi, I have a question about foreign rental income under the NHR. Do I need to pay tax in Portugal under NHR on rental income generated from my apartment in Dubai, in the UAE? Portugal and UAE have double taxation agreements, but I can't see what it says. Oh, I've read that because UAE is a tax haven, zero income tax, and is on the EU blacklist, rental income will be taxed at 28%. And some say it could be even 35%. And some say I don't pay any rental income tax in Portugal. How confusing. Can you help with that, Ricardo?
Okay, we have experience with this. You don't
Yeah.
pay tax on rental income in Portugal. Although the Dubai is a blacklisted jurisdiction, that would apply to capital income where you would pay 35%, but the rental income, no, that would be tax-free in Portugal, providing that the double tax agreement signed says that is taxed in Dubai. So I don't have the Dubai double tax agreement in front of me, but normally it states that it's taxed in the country where the property is located. So in Portugal, it's declared but not taxed.
Very good. Very clear answers and very helpful and attractive, I think, to the people who are asking them tonight as well. Positive response. Yeah. Jean K, did I just hear correctly that the reduced 10% tax on pension income is not the only tax on retirees residing in Portugal, but also the capital gains arising outside of Portugal and are taxed during the NHR period at 28%?
Correct. So if you have a pension, you pay 10% tax. If you buy and sell shares or securities, you will pay tax in Portugal, even with the NHR. And normally the tax, if you are taxed autonomously, 28%, you can choose to be taxed at the progressive tax rates, but that will depend on your level of income, and perhaps your tax bracket will be higher than 28%. So yeah, it's correct. Unfortunately, if it's the case, if you are buying and sell shares, if you make a gain, you pay 28%. On the other end, if you make a loss, you have 5 years that you can offset that loss against future gains. So for instance, let's say that now the capital, the share market is in a bad state and you are losing money. You could sell the share and buy it again. On that sale of that share, you need to report, and you will report a loss. And next year, if you have a gain, you will be able to offset that loss. You can use those losses for 5 years. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Ricardo. So 2 more definitely. Well, then we'll close the recording, and anything I've missed in this section we'll come back to, because I've seen a couple of good ones here. Are there exemptions for US state government pensions? Is a question from Leah.
It will be exempt, irrespective of the NHR. Okay.
Okay.
If you have a civil service pension, state government pension, it's always under the double tax agreements taxed in the country of source and not on the country of residency. Okay. Yes. So after the 10 years, still exempt.
Okay. And finally, for now, in this recorded section, a great question from Vadim. And we'll come back to you, Vadim, because I know you had other questions as well. A Portuguese accountant told me, Ricardo, that in order to file a personal tax return on my behalf, he has to get my login and password and file the return impersonating me, in a sense. Is this normal? Or is there a way without a taxpayer being impersonated? This is standard practice in Portugal, isn't it? You hand over your logins to the portal.
It is. Yeah. It is. That's why we sign a service level agreement with the client, where he signs and authorizes to submit a tax return on his behalf, and it shows what are our what we expect from the client and what are our duties and obligations. But yes, that's the way to do it. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen when you have a business, because then I can submit as an accountant, I can submit the tax returns for companies without using their passwords, just using mine as an accountant. But I'm not your accountant. You don't have a business. So I'm actually using your personal logins. So to protect ourselves and the clients, we sign a service level agreement before doing so. Okay.
Very good. And it's a bit of a cultural adjustment, isn't it? Because what Vadim's come to the conclusion there is it's like an impersonation, but it is standard practice all across Portugal, isn't it?
It is. All
right. Superb job, Ricardo, so far. Thank you so much. Is there anything you want to add before we conclude that part of the webinar presentation tonight?
No, I think we shared most of the main questions that everybody normally asks. But we are happy to give you any more answers if you want to send us an email. If you want to have a call as well, we are happy to help you.
Okay, and that's a service you can offer to, of course, to Expats Portugal Premium members. Perfect. Thank you very much, Ricardo, so far.